Let me ask you, you rightly praised the U.S. military for how quickly they were able to defeat Saddam Hussein's forces on the open battlefield. And for those of us that are military analysts, I mean, I don't think there was any doubt going into this that we would be able to militarily defeat Saddam in relative short
I don't think anybody expected only 3 weeks and so few casualties.
So the question is, given how easily we were able to do that, you know, how was Saddam really a threat to us? I mean, he sort of demonstrates he was at best a third-rate military. He certainly didn't have the capability to strike the United States directly, and even though he was, you know, obviously giving aid and support to terrorist groups, those groups weren't attacking the United States. So how was Saddam the kind of threat that the Bush administration portrayed, and obviously that you also feel that Saddam was a threat?
Let me remind you that it was not the Bush administration alone that portrayed Saddam as a threat, nor was he the first. I could cite you, and I have about 10 pages of citations in my book, of statements by leading members of the Clinton administration and leading Democrats in both houses of Congress, including the likes of Nancy Pelosi, Carl Levin, and so on, who said in the late years of the Clinton administration that Saddam Hussein was a terrible threat, that something had to be done. It was an urgent priority. I mean, I can read you these if you want, but
the fact of the matter was he wasn't a big
but
threat.
He was. Let me answer your question. One of the things that greeted George W. Bush upon taking office was a letter signed by a whole group of Democratic senators, including some of the ones who now claim to have been lied to or misled, or urging him to do something about Saddam Hussein. Now, if you want to say that they were all wrong, I'll argue.
I would say they were all wrong.
I'll argue about, but it's a very important point to establish that it wasn't just a bipartisan consensus. There was an agreement across the board in this country and throughout the world that Saddam Hussein, something had to be done about Saddam Hussein. I mean, even the French under Chirac, who tried to prevent us in every which way from taking military action against him, even he said that Saddam Hussein was a threat, but he thought the threat could be handled by sanctions. Now, were all these people crazy? Well, maybe they were. It's theoretically possible. But you know, what I see the justification and the need for having taken him out relates to the larger strategy in this war, of which Iraq was one front, the second front to have been opened, the second theater of operations. This 9/11 persuaded George W. Bush and a lot of other people, most Americans, and in fact both houses of Congress, which authorized the use of force against Iraq, persuaded us that there was a war being waged against us. War, I would say, goes back all the way to 1970. That we had not responded to. We had treated it as these were random criminal acts to be dealt with by the cops. John Kerry has said about terrorism, we should treat it as a nuisance, that's his word, like illegal gambling and prostitution. We can live with it, it doesn't have to disrupt our lives, the cops can take care of it. I find it incomprehensible that anybody could say that after 9/11, but okay, a lot of people think that. Now, what 9/11 said to most Americans is that the time had come to fight back, that war had been declared on us. In fact, it had been declared on us many times before, but we chose to ignore it. You attack an American battleship, the USS Cole, that's an act of war by any standard. We finally decided that the time had come to fight back, and if you're going to fight back, you have to have a strategy, an overall objective that you're pursuing in this battle. And the overall objective that the Bush doctrine that Bush developed, and that certainly was endorsed, at least to begin with, by most Americans, was to go after this force, Islamofascism, which had I call it a monster with two heads, one of them religious, one of them secular, but they were in de facto collaboration. And the religious head was the Taliban regime. That is the most salient embodiment was the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. We deposed that regime, and the most salient representative of the secular or fascist head was Saddam Hussein's Iraq.
But
I
Iraq
myself,
and Afghanistan weren't allied with
I
each
myself,
other. In fact, many of these
yeah,
countries aren't have no great love for each other. So how do they? It seems like very much a conflated threat.
No, but they have no great love for each other any more than Sunnis and Shiites do. But they don't hesitate for a minute in making alliances against the common enemy, which is mainly us. The point is that I myself, for example, never thought that the weapons of mass destruction issue was the only or even the main one for getting rid of Saddam Hussein. I still believe that he probably had them, and I suspect that they're hidden somewhere in Syria at this moment. But whether he had them or not, certainly everyone believed that he did. Nobody doubted it. He himself appears to believe that he did. But I think the invasion of Iraq was sort of over-determined. There were about 18 different reasons for going after him. And I
but
myself,
not connected to 9/11.
Well, yeah,
because
no,
he didn't attack us on 9/11.
I know, but
Al-Qaeda attacked us.
Well, I know,
Saddam wasn't a known supporter of Al-Qaeda.
Hitler didn't attack us at Pearl Harbor. The Japanese did, and we went to war against.
Well, they were allied. They were part of an actual Axis alliance.
Yeah, not a very friendly one. And what we did when people say, how come we went to Iraq? Well, what we did when we went to war after Pearl Harbor was to go to North Africa. We didn't go to Japan, or we took on the Africa Corps, which is Hitler's elite force in North Africa.
But again, Germany and Japan were aligned. They were clearly part of an alliance that was aligned against us, and you can make that was a direct connection. I'm having a hard time making any connection, quite frankly, between Saddam Hussein's regime, which I agree with you, not a great guy. I mean, I'm not arguing that we should all vote Saddam Hussein into power, but we were attacked on 9/11, and I agree with you that we have to go after the people who attacked us. But that was Al-Qaeda as an organization, which is representative of a larger radical Islamic threat. I just don't see that Saddam Hussein embodied that threat as bad a person as he was, and that we could have decided on some other, perhaps I would argue, better targets than Saddam Hussein.
Maybe there would have been better targets, but I think Saddam Hussein was the right target in implementing this strategy of draining the swamps in which Islamofascism was bred, and he certainly presided over one of those swamps. It was not a question, again, of sort of narrowly targeting the few people who attacked us on 9/11, which would have been a big mistake because something larger was involved here. And
we haven't even gotten bin Laden. I mean, it's not even a question of narrowly targeting. We seem to have almost completely taken our eye off of the ball and given bin Laden a pass for all the evil that you believe Saddam represents. Isn't bin Laden a greater evil that we should be paying more attention to?
Well, it would be very good to get him, and I suspect we will get him before long. But the point is not that bin Laden as an individual was the guy to go after. What we were confronted with was a large totalitarian force. I call it Islamofascism because I think that's the best designation. We were not going after an organization called Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was one element of that force. You see, to talk about going after Al-Qaeda, it's as though, okay, they hit us, therefore we hit them back, and that's the end of it.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but that's who our target is.
No, that's the implication, and we did target the regime that was nurturing them, the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, and I believe that the necessary next step was a process of trying to reconfigure the political character of that regime, of that region. I think, by the way, I won't live to see it, but something similar will happen to the Middle East when we win this war, similar to what happened in Eastern Europe when we won World War III.
We turned our attention to Iraq so quickly, and the job of even trying to create, if you believe it's the right thing to do, a stable democracy in Afghanistan is hardly done. Seems to me that we may be biting off a lot more than we can chew.
Well, I would say we certainly bit off a lot, and I would say that to have toppled two of those despotic Islamo-fascist regimes in whatever it is, 4 years, 5 years, is a great achievement of this war. And when you compare when you compare the situation to any other war in terms of loss of life and how long it takes to change the territory that you're trying to change. I mean, it took us 10 years in Germany. It took us about 10 years in Japan. Where the fact that it's turning out to be tougher than a lot of people thought to establish democratic regimes in countries that were suffering for 40 years, and in some cases many more, from despotic and totalitarian regimes is not surprising, and we shouldn't have been surprised. And I would say this to you, Charles, that I consider the resistance that's been mounted to what we're trying to accomplish in Iraq, that is the democratization, planting the seeds of democratization, nourishing, hoping that they'll blossom fully. The resistance which has been mounted, first of all, by remnants of the Ba'athist regime, the Sunni insurgents, joined by Al-Qaeda in Iraq, joined by jihadists imported from other countries. These three groups.
Well, and even Shiites who are resisting democratization,
Shiite death
at least
squads.
our version of democratization.
Yeah. Some of the Shiite death squads also. But the point I'm trying to make is, if they thought, as so many people here think, that the project of democratization was doomed, I don't think they'd be blowing themselves up in order to derail it and make sure that it doesn't succeed. I think it's a kind of perverse tribute to the Bush doctrine. They think it has a very good, in fact, it is succeeding, and that it is a mortal threat to them, not only within Iraq, but in the surrounding countries. And that's why they're fighting with all their might to prevent its success. I think they're right from their point of view. It is a mortal threat to them. It is intended to be, because what we're trying to do here, and what I think, by the way, a Democratic administration, when a Democrat becomes president, and they have to forego the luxurious indulgences of an irresponsible opposition, they have to take charge. They have the responsibility for deciding what to do. I think they will discover that this is the only way to go, the Bush doctrine. We need to reshape the political character of that region, just as we have started to do in East Europe after the fall of the Soviet Union, after we beat the Soviet Empire.